Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Dr. Jerry Pops. I was doing research here while I was a professor in public administration at West Virginia University. I worked here off and on doing the research from about 2002 until, here I am in 2016. I'm still here. And I wrote a book on the basis of my research called Ethical Leadership in Turbulent Times, about the record of George C. Marshall. And it was a book to model his behavior for students in public administration for ethical leadership.
Thanks, Jerry. And can you talk a little bit more about how you became interested in writing your book about George Marshall and his leadership?
Sure. I taught ethics in public administration and leadership, and I'd been shopping around for a good book about ethical leadership and couldn't find one. We had very little in the public administration field, lots of works on theory, and a lot that was imported from the world of business administration, but nothing that I felt was very usable. And I was very familiar with Marshall and his history in our area. We were close to Uniontown, Pennsylvania, where he grew up. So I approached the library here at the Marshall Museum and Library and talked to Larry Bland, who at that time was putting together the papers on Marshall and was the curator here. And Larry encouraged me to pursue a scholastic study of Marshall and his leadership. And that's what I did. So I wrote a book of approximately 300 pages on Marshall's particular type of leadership and the ethical qualities that were invested in that. And that's how it evolved. And it also helped that the work was done here in Virginia, where I love to visit, and this area is a wonderful place to visit to do research.
Great. And Jerry, while you're doing your research for your book, I'm sure you came across a bunch of great stories and examples about Marshall and his ethical leadership. But is there one that particularly stood out, or one that's memorable for you and that you found during your research here?
Many. But one area of his life that I was particularly interested in and doesn't get much attention was his time in China in 1946. This is a much overlooked period, and it's written off in the books and other books that casually refer to it as the failure of the Marshall Mission in China. Which I think is very unfair. The history is much denser and much more complicated, and is characterized actually by some startling successes which Marshall achieved early in that year, and those were canceled by world events and the deteriorating relationships between the United States and the Soviet Union. But it's a very complicated history, and one which I think Americans should study a great deal more. That's an area that I still work on. Other than that, some of the personal anecdotes about Marshall are very heartwarming. He was a great father figure to a lot of children in the bases at which he worked, particularly in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s. He organized Christmas parties. He played with children when he came home from work at the office, and he had no children of his own. And he taught some children how to fish, and he was a very warm-hearted person, which stands quite a bit at odds with his image as a strict, aloof, sometimes bureaucratic type of leader. In his heart, he was a very different person than sometimes his image was.
Thanks, Jerry. And just one final question: is there anything else you'd like to add, just about the research experiences you've had here at the Marshall Foundation?
Yeah, I would. This is a wonderful place to work. I've done a lot of archival work in my days at the National Archives, at the Truman Library, at the Eisenhower Library, and this by far is the best place that I've ever worked. There's a warmth here. When you work here, you're kind of conscious of the presence of Marshall and a lot of the people that he was close to. There's the museum here, which gives it a special kind of a glow. And plus the staff has always been very helpful and very kind, very easy to work with. So that's been an important experience in my life. I love to come down here every few months to do research. And when the research for the book was completed, it was difficult to leave. I kind of mourned the passing of Marshall for a while.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, Jeffrey. It's been fun to talk to you.